everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Not Podcast. And very happy to have with me today Michael Bull from Bull Realty. Great to see you again. And the last time I had the opportunity to do something like this with Michael was on his show, which we'll talk a little bit about later, America's Commercial Real Estate Show. So. Um, Excited to chat about that, but let's get an introduction from Michael Bull, and we'll go from there. So welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. I guess I'll do a 60-second on me, I guess. Does that
However
work?
many seconds you want.
Okay. I'm a commercial real estate broker. I've been in the business, I just like to call it 35 years now. Kind of leave it at that. That's enough. That's enough years. And I started a brokerage firm 27 years ago based on integrity and incredible disposition marketing. Now a licensed broker in all the southeastern states, and we have about 50 people. And then I host America's Commercial Real Estate Show, which I had the pleasure of having you there before. I've been hosting that every week for 14 and a half years. And that's been a lot of fun. Then I have a training company that trains commercial real estate agents around the country, around the world in some cases, that has 21 one-hour videos on that companies use for sales meetings and things like that. As a broker, I own Bull Realty, but I also lead a team that sells office buildings, which is a great subject these days. And we have a vertical in government leased as well, which is also kind of another interesting topic today. What's going on with Doge and all of that?
Awesome. So it sounds like you've got a lot of extra time on your hands. Maybe you have another business to start up on the side.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Oh, I love doing deals. So that's the fun part is taking assignments and selling them for folks. So I
Yeah.
do need more of that.
Yeah. Well, we both come from brokerage, and I can say as an entrepreneur now, having started CompStack, the brokerage business though is entrepreneurial unto itself, right? So it would make sense that somebody who's in brokerage would also want to be doing other things that are entrepreneurial because it's kind of in the blood, right? It's the nature
That's
of
right.
the nature of the kind of people who I think are good in this business. If you're not an entrepreneur, you're probably not going to be exceptional as a broker.
That's right. Every agent when they first start, they're really starting their own business. So
Yeah. Well, maybe we should piggyback off that a bit, and you could talk a little bit about how you've seen the business change, and your time when you started in brokerage, and how it's changed from then to now, and what's remained the same, and what's fundamentally different.
well, obviously the technology's changed a lot, right? The tools have incredibly changed, and some of and I'll touch on that, but some of the things that haven't changed is, the relationships, the knowledge, the skills, the fact that getting well trained and working with high integrity helps build your practice, and caring about the people you work with, and treating everyone in a transaction the way you want to be treated, keeping in mind who your client is. And so just the hand-to-hand negotiation and challenges haven't changed that much. The technology has changed in awesome ways. To give you an idea, one of the first bits of technology I had was when I was an agent before I started Bull. I focused on multifamily apartments in Atlanta, and I kept 30 to 35 listings at all times, just a huge market share. And one of the things I did, remember the fax machines? I
Yeah.
had what I called the shopping list of all my listings, which had a title, a price, and an address, and two lines of description, and it had a number on it, and people could get this list, and then they could dial in, enter the number, and automatically get a fax back. So this is before the internet. I
Yeah.
was creating technology to try to get information out efficiently. And then if you go to way back on the website, on the
Yeah.
web, you can go back, look at my old site in like 2002 or three. It was an incredible knowledge information site. So early on, I was giving out information for free. And some of the friends of my colleagues at the big shops said, Michael, why are you giving that stuff for free? And I'm like, dude, they're going to get it anyway. I'm just making it easier.
It's funny. I was not as early on as you. I mean, I started in brokerage in 2006, and I just decided to start a blog in 2008. and to my knowledge, I didn't know of a single commercial real estate broker who had a blog at that time.
Right.
Um, and it's funny to your point about giving information away. I was learning the business. So I
Right.
was just, writing posts about the things I was learning that I thought were the most interesting, and I would write a post about them. And I thought that it would help me get business. But what I found was I was, to your point of the business you're in, I was training a lot of other commercial real estate brokers. Like all of the outreach I got was not from prospective, you know, clients that I could work with or prospects. It was other brokers who were like, "Oh, this was so helpful to me. Thank you for
Right.
presenting this information," which I felt good that I helped them, but that wasn't my goal,
Right.
in creating the blog. But now the only way you can find it similarly is on the Wayback Machine. But
Yeah.
you know, um, how have you seen? I'm curious. Have you seen the data landscape change in that time? Because obviously we're in the data business. That's what we're focused on. Do you
Yeah.
see it as fundamentally different or very or similar?
No, it's very, very different. I mean, when I first started out, I had to create my own even database of properties. I mean, I went to tax records and got tax records and zoning and started there. And then I went and took photographs of all the buildings in my market. And then had to dig in and research how to reach people and had to create it all. And I remember a guy seeing me do that. I was out in front of a building, apartment deal, and this guy said, "What are you doing?" And I told him that. And he said, "You're an idiot." I was like 22. He says, "You're an idiot. That's not going to work." It did work. so,
Good.
uh, so yeah, the technology and the information is so different and so much more organized. There was a guy in my shop when I was young, and I was always studying all the top brokers around the country and what they were doing and how they were doing it best. And there was a guy in my own shop who could remember every phone number, every address, every price, every name, what everyone was looking for. He had this computer mind that was just crazy. And it's like, and I tell my guys now in my training or when I speak, it's like, all right, you don't have to have that guy's computer mind because we have computers, we have
Yeah.
CRMs, we have data now. The technology, the information is so much better and so much different. I also think it puts a lot of people on more equal footing. Like we just took out a $40 million assignment. And some people may think we're a local company. Now we're a regional company and we do business in some cases all over the country. But the information today can kind of put you on an equal footing if you have good skills and you're well trained to compete with anybody or any company. So it's a new world. It's opened up a lot of opportunities for folks.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely agree with that. I think that, part of what we've hoped that we've been able to help people do with Comstack is, level that playing field a bit. Not so much trying to make it so that every firm can compete, against each other in the same way, but that every individual, can do so in the way that they contribute as much as they can to get as much out as they can. But I got to imagine when you were gathering data, and building these internal databases, you had a challenge in just not having the same kind of resources as some of the bigger firms in doing that. But I know that you specialized in certain areas. Was it a matter of gathering the most data in the areas in which you specialized, and that's how you were able to have a leg up, or were the big firms just not as good as I might think at gathering data at that time?
Back then, it was difficult for any of us in any size firm to get good data. And so, I think I just early on realized as an agent how to build a practice and organize a practice. And because I studied it a lot and so I still teach that today to my agents and through our training. But I think, and I had probably 80% of the market share of in-town Atlanta apartments. So, and I think it was part because I worked my fanny off and did it right. But I think the other part was I shared commissions with buyer brokers. I didn't trickle market properties. I sold properties and still to today like you'd want them sold if you're the seller.
Uh,
So not trying to just make a quick buck and keep a deal to myself, but if the seller wants to maximize value on a property, doing it the way you'd want it done as a seller, going to the market in a big way in the beginning, sharing commissions with other brokers in the beginning. Look, the law of supply and demand impacts the value of everything. Commercial real estate's no different. So I think it was just more about the way I was doing business than anything else.
Let's talk about the office market. Since you mentioned that you've been doing office deals, you specialize in selling office buildings. So tell us, where do you see the office market right now? How's it going?
Oh, obviously, it's been kind of crazy, right? So, we're seeing some buildings we're selling for 400 a foot, getting full value for them, and then we have some we're selling beautiful buildings at $60 a foot. Just incredible, where it's 10% or 20% of replacement costs. Um, and then we're seeing some office just doing really well. Some of the government office we sell is doing extremely well, specifically state government tenants that aren't impacted by Doge. Those buildings are selling very well. There's a lot of investors that look for the safety of those tenants. And then our medical buildings are selling extremely well, as you know. And then when it comes to smaller buildings in good markets where owner occupants can buy them, doing extremely well. And then on the larger buildings with a lot of vacancy, values are just still really low. I do think it's an incredible time for folks to buy office. My prediction is that the office market turns more positive now faster than any of us really think right now. And I think the basic reasons are one, some buildings will get torn down,
Yeah.
removed from the market. Some buildings will get converted. And uh, then you'll have these companies, more of them getting back to the office. I mean, every month there's another company that says, you know what, we want everybody back 3 days, or we want everybody back 5 days. Then you have the natural growth of a market like the Southeast where we work. And then you have, here's the big one, you have new supply stops, right? Starts have already slowed down on almost every sector,
Yeah.
but especially office. So as new supply really stops, and they have this demand come back naturally and from back to work, you're going to see it turn around faster than people think. And if you look at past downturns, Michael, I mean, you look at how much money was made after the savings and loan crisis when people buying multifamily or buying homes when the great financial recession, buying homes after that, or buying retail when it was left for dead. I mean,
Yeah.
buying when everybody thinks something's dead makes the most the huge returns for some of these groups. So I think this is the decade and probably the year to buy office.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. And you mentioned this, just the fundamentals of supply and demand. And, we've certainly seen it in our data. We just came out with our uh, semi-annual, office report. And this time around, we looked at it on a market by market basis, and we broke it up by CBD and suburban, and also broke it up by, Class A versus Class B and C. And I think, for the last year or two, everybody's been talking about the strength of trophy, you know, office assets, and then maybe, the better, newer Class A office assets. But people weren't really talking about B and C. Everybody was afraid of B and C. And, the sentiment was, and, there's a flight to quality, and that tends to happen, in a downturn. But I think that when you are looking to identify if the market's coming back, you have to look at B and C, or the A minus at a minimum, right? And then the B and C, and see like, okay, are those coming back? Are the rents coming back for those kind of assets? Then you know that things are really coming back. And what we're seeing with our data is that that's in fact happening, right? The rents in markets like New York and Philadelphia, Dallas, you're seeing nice increases in rents in both Class A as well as, B and C. And, depending on the market, some suburban are better than others. But suburban generally has actually come back a little faster and better than urban in most cases. But to your point on, the new supply, right? Like, I think about New York City where I sit, and we have the Hudson Yards with all these brand new, beautiful buildings. Not the best location in the world, but brand new, beautiful buildings. Everybody wanted to be in these brand new, beautiful buildings. Well, now these buildings are full,
Yep.
and what's left is extremely expensive. And so, it has a trickle down effect. People just can't take space that doesn't exist, so they have to start going to older Class A, the Class B and C, or maybe they just get priced out, and it's just supply demand dynamics at work. And that's all happened at the same time as other office buildings being converted to multifamily. So you've got supply coming out of the market, other new supply being taken down, and then what are you left with? You got to take what's there, right? Uh,
Right.
so what you're seeing in the market seems to certainly correlate with the data that we've got.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. I know you guys do a great job with that, and I'm gonna have you on my show again soon to talk about that.
Would love to do that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't take too much credit for it. Our real estate intelligence team is fantastic, and like we've specifically invested in trying to create insights, from our data, because we think it's interesting and exciting, and we've got a data set that other people don't have. So we're trying to do what we can to get that out there and hopefully add some value in that regard.
That's awesome.
Let's talk about the commercial real estate lending market. Um, you get involved in lending. Can you tell me a little bit about where you see the lending market going? And obviously, we've seen a lot of fluctuations. We saw interest rates start to go down in the fall. Um, Not that much. We had the Fed lower rates twice, but then of course, the treasuries don't move totally in tandem with that. And then now we're in the midst of this complete and utter, I don't know if a better word for it is chaos with what's going on with tariffs, the past few days. And some people, are saying that's going to result in, a reduction in inflation, and others say hyperinflation. But how do you see that impacting the lending market, and how has it been impacting the deals that you're doing?
Yeah, it's still harder to get a loan with any lender, it seems, than it was obviously in 2021, the heyday, best year ever. It seems like. It's still tough to get a loan. The loan to value ratios are lower. Debt coverage ratios are higher. They're qualifying more. But I think it's interesting because if you look at commercial real estate, it's typically a long term hold. If you're talking about a long-term hold, then you really want to understand getting at the lower basis when you acquire a property. So buying properties when it's a little, if you can, when interest rates are a little higher and it's harder to get a loan, well, you're naturally going to get a better price on the property and being at a lower basis. It's like I own an office building and I bought many decades ago, and it was at a time when the market was tough and the interest rates were high, but I got it at a lower basis, and on a long term hold, the rate at that time almost is immaterial, right, on a long term hold.
Sure.
So I think that there's a saying out there I saw on the internet that I like. It's date the rate, marry the deal, right? So, I think it's a great time to acquire properties for those who have the fortitude to do it and the ability to get in at a better basis while rates are higher. It's like, what are you going to do? Be hopeful rates come down 100 basis points and then the prices will be higher? And it's a long-term investment for you anyway. Can't you potentially refinance or pay off a note at any time? A lot of them anyway. I don't know. I think it's a good time for lenders. I think it's some of the best times for lenders to do some of the safest loans that they've done in a decade because of the less competition, better pricing on the basis. So I think it's a great time for lenders to build a portfolio, to build relationships, and for investors to get into these deals while the timing is good.
Well, it certainly makes sense that if you can get the same kind of return by, getting a lower basis on the property, that you'll be fine. But I think, what we've seen for the last couple of years is the bid-ask spread hasn't made any sense, right? No, nobody wants to sell at a price that can allow you to get the return that you would otherwise get, with the interest rates that you're getting. I guess what I'm hearing from you then is you think that, you know, the sellers have come to terms with where they need to sell these assets in order to allow the buyers to get the kind of returns they need.
Not all of them,
No?
not enough of them, but yes, transaction volume is increasing. And it's increasing because a lot of the sellers are realizing that, you know what, we're not going to have free money again. If we have free money again, there's probably another problem in the world. We're back to more historic, normal interest rates. We're not going to see a substantial decrease in interest rates. So the new cap rates, the new values are kind of where they are right now. So more sellers are coming around to that. Also, we have in some distressed sellers, some lenders requiring borrowers to sell. And so I think we're seeing some folks take some profits off the table, and taking profits. Maybe they don't have the profits they expected, or they underwrote at the time, but they're taking them. So we're seeing more sellers come around. It's like we just take a portfolio to market at a 7.7 cap. We would have taken that at a probably 6.5 cap in 21. So the returns and the bases are, so much better for these buyers today. We were going to take out a $90 million project. We'd have probably taken that out at a 4.5 cap. It's apartments, Class A, in 21, and we'll probably take it out at a maybe a 5.5 or 6. And it's an apartment project that we'll probably see huge increase in rents in 26 and 27
Yeah.
based on the lack of new supply.
Well, when you consider how much higher the interest rates are, though, that's
Mhm.
actually not that big of a difference by way of
Mhm.
cap rate, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
Exactly.
it seems like the pricing is still, relatively high, but of course, if you can make the deal work there and then you're able to, refinance at a lower rate of some sort later, you're going to be in terrific shape. So, that's the good news.
Well, it's
So,
like I remember years ago, many decades ago, a buyer was buying an apartment complex in New York City, and he was paying a 3 cap. And I questioned him. I said, "What do you mean 3 cap? How does that make sense?" He says, "Michael, they're not making any more land in New York City, and they're just hard to build apartments. The rents are going to go up. They're going to go up." And they did go up, right? So
uh,
he made lots of money.
of course.
Uh, so
Fair point. I mean, and there's been plenty of people who've generated a lot of wealth just, investing, and everybody says, "Oh, I wish I did it 10 years ago. I wish I did it 20 years ago." So,
Well, well, thinking back to it, talked about having 30 to 35 listings, and I called it my shopping list. And I people ask me, Michael, which one of these should I buy? What's the best deal? I'm like, well, you could buy any of these at full list price, and you're going to be extremely glad you did it in 5 years. I mean, crazy happy. So it's not which property should you buy, it's which one fits you the best and what you're doing and your mission and your experience and your equity, right?
although you do need to buy right? I mean, I think that like in the last, 10 years, a lot of people looked a lot smarter than they were. They bought wrong, but prices just kept going up, rents kept going up, and it looked like they were geniuses, but they weren't so smart at all, right? They benefited from a rising tide lifting all boats. You can't discredit the virtue of buying right and understanding the fundamentals of what you're buying.
Oh, that's right. I mean, there was a lot of junior woodchucks out there, and some made mistakes. Right, we're counting on those 10% annual increases in rents, and markets just continuing to explode, and didn't take into account what would happen if interest rates adjusted. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of it's timing, right? It's like the saying used to be, location, location, location. Maybe it's timing, timing, timing.
Sure, totally. So I want to talk about we'll go to number two, or I don't know if it's number two or if it's number three of your businesses here, but let's talk about the training business because I actually was just I did a one of our the not podcast podcast just it hasn't come out yet, but just did one recently with LD, the CEO of Cherry, and we were talking about AI. It was a very AI focused podcast, which I'm not looking for this one to be. Um, and but in particular, we were talking about the role of analysts, and how a trained commercial real estate professional, can use AI, LLMs to, or other AI tools to build out their models and to do a lot of the analysis they might otherwise use an analyst for. And you're in the business of training junior people, right, in the commercial real estate business. How do you think about what they need to learn or don't need to learn, when you've got AI doing so much of their job today, and how also how important or valuable they are to the firms that they're in. Or are they less valuable? Are they more valuable? What happens now?
That's a good question, and I think and we call all agents brokers in commercial real estate because we all think so much
Yeah.
of ourselves. It's just what we do. So, well, I think all commercial brokers should learn all about analysis and underwriting. And regardless if they have an analyst or they're using an outside analyst or they're doing it internally, I think they need to understand analysis and underwriting. When my team is competing for a listing, to sell an office building, the team that's picking us are like, they want to meet our analysts. Like, all right, how do you get buyers to stretch? Where, who's handling that part of it? And also, I think that part of it can be a little bit of how would I say it? It's math. It's not rocket science. You're not having to learn how to sell and persuade, right? So I think the bigger thing with commercial agents is learning how to build a practice and build a presence, and to negotiate and to win deals, and the vocabulary of success, how to have a practice that attracts business and wins business and closes business. So I think what I was doing as I was growing my company over the last 27 years was I get all the training from everyone, every place I can get it, and I always have. And as I soaked up all of that training and shared it with all my guys, I saw a lot of things missing. And so the things missing, I started creating and perfecting them week after week, year after year. And then I thought one day, you know what I'll do one day is probably someone will come along and buy Bull Realty. They'll use it to go national, or they'll just buy it to get me out of the damn way because we're taking up too much market share. And then I will do training, coaching, and I'll just speak for a living and do that kind of thing. But then I realized that, you know what? I don't think I really want to sell Bull Realty. I think I enjoy doing deals. And I realized, well, then if I'm going to speak and train agents, I better do it before I get out on stage and have a walker and a cane. This is the way you sell real estate, there, young fella. So I said, well, let me just go ahead and do it. So I started accepting more speaking engagements, and I created the training. And brokers love it around the country. It's funny, the most experienced brokers are the ones that are surprised about how good it is. They're like, whoa, this is good stuff, because it's stuff that's not really out there. Because I love Rod Santamontimo. I love Mike Lipsy. I love Bob McCombs. I love all these new guys too, and having their training. But I saw things that are missing, and I provide it and people license it. So it's fun to kind of give back at this stage of my career and help others.
Well, I love that you're doing it while running a brokerage, because, I don't know about other people, but I'm always highly skeptical of people who are training you how to do something that aren't doing it themselves. You know, because if you're so good at it, why aren't you doing that thing? Like, why, go spend your time doing that thing instead of teaching other people how to do the thing. I think, you see a lot of snake oil salesmen who are trying to, who are just trying to sell the concept of selling the thing without the substance behind it, and you're proving, no, I'm actually doing that, but I
Yeah.
enjoy teaching, right? So you're and and I think there's a lot to be said for that. So that's great to see. uh,
It's very helpful to your point. Like I'm working on a $90 million listing, a $40 million assignment, and I'm also hit top of my agents with $1 million assignments. So, to give them advice. So yeah, when you're actively doing it, you're really up to date, right? That's a good point.
yeah, and you also, like, you get, the best way to be a master at anything is to teach it, right?
Yeah.
So you probably realize the gaps in your knowledge when you teach something. And I know that, like, you know I teach an internal CRE 101 and CRE 102 class to our team here at Comstack, which is, I don't think bears any resemblance to really what should be in a 101 or 102. It's basically just stream of consciousness ideas from me of things that I think will be valuable to them to understand in commercial real estate when they're here. But um, when I try to add something new, I have to do research. I have to think about, wait, what's the best way to present this? I kind of know it, but I don't fully know it well enough to just necessarily create slides and materials from it just strictly off the top of my head, right? It forces me to master that material a little better. So I'm sure it helps you too.
Oh yeah, it's true. I'm going to be speaking next month at a international investment group that invests in U.S. real estate, and I have to do an update, on the U.S. market. So yeah, as I kind of do my update and do my overview, it helps me with my day-to-day business, right?
So speaking of day-to-day business, so you've got America's Commercial Real Estate Show, and to lay the groundwork a bit, I've been in your studio in your office. It's a pretty large studio. You walk in, it's right there when you walk in. Very impressive. You spent a lot of money building out a professional studio in your office. And now you've got guys like me. I'm sitting in a conference room in the Comstack office. We just decided one day to have a podcast, and here we are. And very little investment compared to what you did. So, how do you think about how the world of media has changed, particularly when you're focused on a very, specific vertical? You were a pioneer in this space. How do you think it's changed, and how do you stay relevant, in this environment, where you were, a unicorn before, and now there's a lot of unicorns.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I had the first podcast on commercial real estate in the country, and we started as a radio show, and then we grew to 47 radio stations, I believe it was, around the country, and we recorded the first one as a podcast. But back then, it was 14 and a half years ago. People would say, "Podcast, what's that?" And if they knew what
Right.
a podcast was, they didn't appreciate it, right? They're like,
Yeah.
"What? That's not good. Aren't you on the radio?" And and then after a while, we kind of dropped the radio stations because you have these hard stops for the commercials, right? And the podcast stuff started growing, and yeah, I think I love it because I think every podcast can have a different slant of what the listener wants and what the podcaster's trying to deliver and what they're trying to do with the information. So I love it. I was on a podcast that was a commercial real estate podcast in a city, and their podcast is all about business and real estate in their city. I mean, it kicks behind for them, right? It's to their market.
Yeah.
So I think it's great. And to your point earlier, it helps them kind of learn more about what they're doing. I mean, I learned so much from doing my show. It's I was just listening to my current show this morning when I was exercising. I don't call it workout anymore. I'm too old. That sounds like I'm pumping iron and big muscles. No, I'm just staying alive at this point. So I was exercising, but I was listening to it and I'm like, man, that is great information. I didn't really catch all of that and how I could use it with my clients when I was doing the show. So I've learned a lot, and the competition. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. You can't throw a cat without hitting a podcaster these days, and I think it's fine because I think we as a listener to a podcast, we're going to gravitate to what we want, and I think that's the great things about podcasts.
So, do you feel like you have more competition though
Oh yeah.
for your audience?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So
Uh,
does it make you up your game to try to make sure people listen to you over somebody else?
Well, that's a good question. And what I've always tried to do every week is make the show better than it was the week before. So that's always been my goal since I did the first show in October of 2010. And I've done a show every week. And every show, if my show wasn't better than the week before, it bothered me. So it's, yeah, I'm always trying to up the game and give better information more efficiently to the audience that I think they want the information.
Yeah, well, it's a hell of a lot of discipline to do that every day for so many years, every week rather, I should say, for so many years. So
Yeah.
give you a lot of credit for that. It's definitely a real commitment, and you've stuck to it. So let's close things up a bit because I think we're coming up on time. You want to give us some predictions and thoughts on how you see the rest of this year going, and it's a really challenging and interesting time for me to ask you this question, obviously, because we're recording this on a week after Trump's Liberation Day, and the stock market is tanked, and we don't know, nobody really knows where things are going at this current moment. So we're just going to let you answer for us. And then by the time this comes out, maybe we'll have more clarity and we'll see if you were right or wrong.
I love it, love it. And you can listen to my old shows and hear my what I thought years ago and see how bad I'm off, right? Or how well dead on I am. Well, and also the stock market has started rebounding this morning, right? So
Yeah,
I
last
it,
I checked, though, those gains all went away.
oh really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
You
it's
checked it.
it's a whipsaw right now.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, is your points valid? I mean, the jury's out on how these tariffs are going to work out. But when I look at the commercial real estate market, I think the volatility of the stock market, makes some more interested in their real estate. I think, we're going to have some inflation moving forward. I think in some cases, owning real estate is a hedge against inflation. I think, when the stock market took a hit too, we saw the 10-year go down a little bit. I think if the 10-year comes down, that helps commercial real estate and residential real estate for long-term mortgages. So I think if the 10-year, I think it was just over 4, but it was below 4. If it below 4, I think that we start to generate more activity in our commercial real estate transactions. So I think we're going to have performance and continue to improve. I think we're going to see transaction volume continue to improve. I mean, we've seen it here. We saw it here since when the Fed started lowering the rate. We saw a little increase in transaction volume. When Trump was elected, another increase. We saw another increase after the first of the year. And we've had the best year listing wise year to date, the first 12 weeks of the year, than we've ever had in our history of 27 years. And I think it's because we spoke earlier, some sellers realizing, you know what, the values are where they are. Let me move and do business. And buyers realizing this is an incredible time to buy, more and more lenders getting active. So I think we'll see increased transaction volume, continue slow increase and performance improvement. And as far as the tariffs go, who knows? But I'm hopeful that that gets worked out in such a way that it doesn't cause too big a drag on the economy and hurt jobs enough that it hurts real estate, right? But who knows? We'll see there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everything's interrelated. So depending on how long they go and which countries it affects, I think we could see ripple effects, but it's hard to know what they all will be for sure. But I think I tend to agree with you. I think, it's felt to us with our customers that everybody was looking for a reason to be a little more optimistic and to do more transactions. They wanted an excuse, right? As soon as everybody knew the Fed was going to lower rates, they all started, picking up their heads and starting to do things because they just wanted that. And I think, sentiment wise, people don't want to have a reason to have to be, you know, to not be optimistic anymore. So it's going to probably take a decent amount of bad news for people to change their tune, I think, because they really are. I think people want to be back in a mode of doing transactions and moving forward. I hope that if we do see a recession or something closer to it, that commercial real estate is truly a hedge and not correlated to the equities market. It certainly felt like it was more correlated the last couple of years, and we'll see what happens, But so really appreciate it. This has been fun, and your insights are tremendous, and your perspective on the market is unique. So really have loved the time we spent together today, and look forward to seeing you again on your show. And for all of our listeners, thank you everyone for listening, and please make sure to follow the podcast and Comstack on social media. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we've got a bunch of new episodes coming out. So stay tuned. Thanks, everybody.